Hello, hello. Welcome to another MetaLogix quick take video. First and foremost, can everyone hear me okay? If you can just chat back to me with a yes if you are listening and hearing, that would be swell. I see there's a couple of people out there, so if anyone can just give me a quick okay, that would be great. Just want to make sure y'all can hear me. Check, check, check. Well, I'm getting audio on my side, so I'm going to move forward under the assumption that you guys can hear me. Oh, yep, looks like sounds great. Thanks so much for that, Stephen. Appreciate it. Okay, so again, this is MetaLogix Quick Takes. This is a series where we take small kind of bite-sized ideas and concepts, troubleshooting issues, support problems, small issue-by-issue videos. We spend about 15 minutes kind of explaining them, and then we open the floor to questions at the end, and we put our heads together on those particular issues. Today, we're going to do something focused on Sharepoint Backup, and here's the link to the archive. All of these videos that we do are recorded and archived off at our website so that you can look at them later on, and that's the link to get to that. A little bit about me. My name is Roy Martinez. I'm the lead MetaLogix support representative for Sharepoint Backup. I have several years of experience working with this Sharepoint Backup tool since its original inception over at the Idera company. I've had the opportunity to watch this tool's feature set grow in response to customer demand and the underlying technology advancements since the 1.0 version release. So I've pretty much seen it all with Sharepoint Backup, and I'm eager to share that expertise with you guys moving forward. There have been quite a few cool enhancements in the tool since the original inception, and I'm lucky to have seen them all from the get-go. So, adding and discovering a farm in Sharepoint Backup is what we're going to be talking about today. So we've downloaded the installer for the tool. We've run the installation on our application server, got everything running. We've launched the console for the first time, and we want to get our farm added so we can start backing stuff up as quickly as possible, right? And upon launching that console, the very first thing we see is this configuration wizard, which I recognize some of the names out there. Some of you guys are very likely quite familiar with this process. So the configuration wizard in general is it just steps us through initial configuration, beginning with this farm discovery section that we're going to be talking about today. And it's intended to take us from zero to backup in one wizard, right? For the purpose of easing that process of deploying out components across all the different locations in the farm environment. So it's really just, in the original inception of this tool, there were several different phases of getting backup services installed where they need to be and getting, getting all the components where they needed to go. So we created this wizard in about, I think, version 3.2.x, somewhere along those lines, to kind of bring all those processes down to one specific wizard. And it's been great since that happened. So the very first step in that wizard is this discovering a Sharepoint farm step, right? So this is a two-step process, and this is what we're going to be looking at specifically today. And the reason I wanted to focus on this particular aspect of the configuration wizard separately in its own quick take is that, this is the place where this is the first point of failure for most installations. If there are installations that fail up from the beginning, this is likely where that failure begins, because this is the first point in which we are actually doing direct interfacing with the farm outside of that application server where we've got the management service installed, right? And you can refer to the other quick take video I did last week on Sharepoint Backup architecture to refresh on the different components and where they live. But suffice it to say, the management service has been installed at this application server, and now we're trying to reach out to the farm to learn his topology so we know where to put our backup services, essentially. And the reason we call it a discovery is that essentially what we're doing is, in these two steps, we're identifying the Sharepoint configuration database connection string, and we're using a WMI call to do that. We're learning that directly from the registry hive on the central admin machine. And then we're connecting to that configuration database to read the farm topology and learn, quote unquote, which servers are out there in the farm. So that identification of the connection string step, what we're requiring there is essentially farm administrator access in Sharepoint to get us to central admin, And then additionally, local administrative privileges on that central admin machine to remotely query the registry via WMI. Okay, so we're touching the registry, reading a key out of it to learn where the configuration database lives, and then in the second step, we're connecting to that configuration database, which obviously requires that we have some DBO access to that SharePoint config database itself. Once we're in there, we can do some standard SQL queries to learn the hierarchy of the farm and learn where things need to go. So without further ado, I like to keep these short and sweet, so let's just jump right in and just take a look at this from the inside out so we can see. It's one thing to know what's happening, but really what we need to look at is how can this fail? What can cause this step to fail? And so let's jump over to my VM here. As you can see, I've got Central Administration open. So in Central Admin, we can see that I've got a single server essentially running, and it's this local server. This is a very, very simple farm for the purposes of this discussion. It could get far more complicated, and obviously as more and more servers are added and the levels of abstraction grow, the points of failure can increase, and we'll talk about it a little more at the end of the discussion here. But in general here, we've got Spitfire 3, which is our main SharePoint server, and he hosts pretty much everything, right? He also hosts the SQL server, and any other services that we've got running in the farm, they all live there. So I have created a user called QT test, quick take test, and as you can see, I went ahead and made him a member of the administrators group on this machine because, hey, I know I'm going to need local admin access, right? So that's usually the first step taken by most users in the field, and yeah, of course we need that, so that's a no-brainer, right? So what do? I open up Sharepoint Backup, and spoiler alert here, this is actually the soon-to-be-released version 5.0, which some of you probably haven't even seen yet. I guess nobody has seen it yet. But yeah, be prepared for additional quick take videos in the future regarding new feature sets here. But so what I'm going to do, now I've already discovered my farm in this case, but we can always go back and look at that configuration wizard whenever we want. So that's how we're going to do this test. So assuming I just installed for the first time, here's the configuration wizard that pops up. It lets us know what steps are going to be taken, and we're obviously focused on this first step. But it also does these things. It deploys the backup services, it deploys the self-service recovery solution, it manages licenses, and so on and so forth, with the intention of getting you up to scheduling a backup by the time it's all said and done. So we're going to next through this, and we see our central admin window for the initial farm discovery. Now, again, since I've already discovered this is auto-populated, but we would have typed in our central admin URL here. As you can see, mine is http spitfire3:port. And we're going to specify an account that has administrator privileges on the central administration computer. Now, if that was all I read in this wizard, which often, let's be honest, when we're in a hurry, we're getting stuff installed, sometimes it's the very first line that you read and you just go for it from there. So we're going to work based on that assumption, and we're going to input our account that we created, Spitfire3/QT_test. We're going to pop in the password here, and we're just going to next through. Pretty sure I've got this set up to break, hopefully. So the first thing we see is an informational message just letting us know that we're going to create a web application user policy and give ourselves full access across the board. And then we're trying to get the list of SharePoint servers at this point. So right now he's spending time attempting to take those two steps, and it looks like he succeeds, right? So let's go back and let's remove some privileges here to make this a little more interesting. Let's go into Central Admin first of all. Let's make sure that he is not a farm admin to begin with. So we're going to remove him there. Oops. And then we're going to remove him from SQL. And by that I mean we're going to take away DBO privileges on the config database, right? So we've seen success. So here we're approximating failure. So all we have is local administrative privileges at this point. So we might see an error now attempting, unless it's cached. In fact, why don't we just cancel and re-begin? Oops. That would have also failed, by the way. All right. So right off the bat, we're told configuration database may be unavailable, or the credentials supplied may be incorrect, or may not have access to the configuration database. Now, this is a very broad scoped error message, right? And all it's really telling us is, hey, one of those steps that we need to do didn't work, right? Either A, you don't have local admin privileges, or B, you don't have farm admin privileges, or C, you don't have DBO to the configuration database. So it's a little bit broad, but if we drill into the actual management service log, we should see a little bit more detail, although sometimes these can be just as cryptic. As you can see here, login failed for user blank, right? So what that tells, I mean, because I am familiar with the tool, I know, and these logs typically end up coming to me, right? Because I'm familiar with the tool, I know that this means we don't have farm administrative access, right? This is the message that comes back from SharePoint when we don't have what we need. So step one, I know I can jump into central admin and just provide that access, right? So I'm going to add to my farm admin group my QT_test account. Great. I don't want a welcome email, so I'm going to OK that. Simple. I'm a farm admin now, so now things should work, right? Well, let's check it out and see. Of course, this is going to fail, and the reason being, you know, we granted the farm access, but what did we not grant? We didn't grant DBO access to the configuration database itself. So we get the same error message, but back here in the log, we might see a little bit different messaging from the logger. Right, so as you can see, the select permission was denied on the object in the SharePoint config database, right? So this tells me, okay, well, we need to go make sure we have access and privileges to that database so that we can do that query, right? And we can just go ahead, and you saw where I removed it. We can just add it right back in. Go to my account in SQL, go to the user mapping, jump down to the config database, and just make sure I have at least DB owner. Now, DB owner gives you basically, it's basically like sysadmin specific to this database. Obviously, if your account was a system administrator across all of SQL Server instance, then that would propagate the same privileges. But for the purposes of this specific action, we just need DB owner. And it's basically to execute a select query and read stuff out of the table, right? We OK that. We jump back into our dialog, try the test again, and this time we should see some success, the way we did the first time. Getting the list. And our first indication that we've got some success is that, hey, he's taking a little bit longer. That means some of these things are actually happening. And sure enough, now again, I've already done this before, so these are grayed out, but as you can see, it lists out my WFE server, and at which point I would check it, hit next, and then it would deploy the backup service out to that server. So as you can see, there's a couple of points of failure available for the discovery process. Again, we start by jumping into the central admin machine and reading from this particular registry key this particular data string. See how it lists the instance name, Spitfire 3. It also lists the database name, SharePoint config. This is what we're grabbing, and it's the exact same thing as listed here in central admin under managed servers in this farm. This string right here. This is what we're pulling back from the registry. Once we have that, obviously we jump in here. We do a remote SQL call to query these tables directly to learn the farm topology. Once we have that, we know where to deploy backup services. So that's 2 potential points of failure for the discovery process. Obviously, there are other ways that this could fail. The most notable being if we have aliasing set up for our SQL servers. Perhaps it could be that my Spitfire 3 here is actually a SQL alias pointing to another physical SQL server and machine name / instance, in which case if that isn't configured on the client machine where my console is running, then we won't be able to connect to that SQL instance. We'll see the same message, but in our log we'd have a message along the lines of an instance or network centric or instance related error occurred attempting to connect to the SQL server. The catch-all error message for inability to resolve a SQL connection string to the instance itself. So that's kind of it. I mean, there are a couple places to fail, but once you have your permissions in order, this discovery process should succeed. And this discovery process happens once and once alone, just in this first discovery. After this is done, we no longer have to worry about this particular connection. So this doesn't have to be your backup service account. This doesn't have to be your management service account. It can be a single account that we're using specifically for the purpose of querying this data to populate our repository database. Once that's done, we don't have to think about it again. So that said, we're making some okay time. So we've got about 12 or 13 minutes. If anyone has questions, now is the time to throw them out. If no one has questions, that means that I'm just the best at explaining all this, and you guys understand it perfectly. And there's, no, spoke too soon. I've got a quick question from Art. Go ahead. Yeah, it's type only, unfortunately, for the questions, but is it that we have to be able to? Yes, it is absolutely that we do have to be able to discover. If you don't discover, well, I'll put it this way. Yeah, so Art's question is this absolutely integral? If we can't do this, will it prevent us from using the tool, essentially, if I'm not mistaken? In his case, he's got a second DMZ where he's got servers out there, so discovery might not be possible. So Art's raised a perfect question here, and we'll get to that second item there in a second, Art, about the ports. But to begin with, let's say you have 2 DMZs, and let's say you can't necessarily authenticate over to one from the other. In that case, I guess the overarching answer is no. It's certainly possible to bypass this discovery process. If discovery fails, we can always go manually install our backup services to the machines we want them to be on in the farm, right? We can go to, if I had 3 servers, 2 of which were in a different DMZ, we could go to those other 2 servers, run the installation manually, select to install the backup service separately, and then during that installation, we'll provide information about where the management service lives to give him information about who to contact. Once that's done on all those servers in the farm, the next time you open your console, instead of getting a central admin configuration wizard, you'll get a readout of your farm, because the backup services themselves, remember the whole reason we want to discover these farm topology is to deploy our backup services so that we have endpoints to communicate back to us when we're ready to get statuses back or initiate operations. All we care about at the end of the day is getting our backup service out there. That's the whole reason for this discovery. If we can't discover, we can always, as the administrators who know the topology, we can always go out and install our backup service manually, and provided there's sufficient TCP communication between the 2 endpoints, the backup service will handshake to that management service right to the repository where he lives, and all will be well. So it's a little bit more advanced concept than the initial discovery, but suffice it to say, we can circumvent this discovery by manually installing our backup services, right? All we care about in the end is that we have backup services at the endpoints that we need them to be on to perform our backup operations. The second part of Art's question was that he had ports blocked on those machines in the end. Now, I'm not sure what specific ports he means. He probably means the ports that would allow remote access to deploy. Or if he's talking about it looks like he's got 7484 and 7485. Those are the 2 ports that Art our service is used. So unfortunately, there's really no way around that. We're going to have access to 7485 on any machine hosting a backup service and 7484 on any machine hosting a management service. So we're going to have to get that access one way or the other. Even if we can't discover, if we go install our backup services manually, they still have to connect on 7484 and 7485 unless we manually change those ports. We can always do that. I think that's maybe what your next question was going to be. Yes, they do have to be on every server in the farm. So in older versions of and Mark's follow-up question was, does the backup service have to be on every server in the farm? And the answer is yes. In the current version, the answer is absolutely correct, yes. So in older versions of this tool, we only ever did granular backup, which all it needed was one single entry point to the Sharepoint object model on any WFV, right? And once we had that one single entry point, we could learn all about the objects that we were backing up and restoring granularly. Since the inception of farm component backup, which leverages not the Sharepoint object model, but the volume shadow copy services, volume shadow copy services in Windows to do root level component backups. Since we're using that mechanism now, that mechanism in and of itself requires visibility to and from all the endpoints in the farm architecture. So that's the reasoning behind why we would need a Windows service, the Sharepoint backup service, living on every single server in the farm, is to allow us access to VSS on each and every one of those machines in the farm, so that VSS can talk back and forth between the machines, and so can we. It becomes a web of sorts of communication between these service endpoints. So yeah, to sum up, yes, we definitely need the backup service on every server in the farm. So that's another reason behind why we decided to make this configuration wizard, was to try to ease that process up front at the beginning. In an ideal scenario, obviously, we'd have access and we can just learn and deploy right from here. In more tightened or buttoned down environments where security is a higher concern, we might need to step beyond those simple terms and get into some advanced configuration. That does include DBs, yes. That includes the SharePoint SQL Server database instance. So remember, one of the components that we back up, and in the newest version, 5.0, the primary component that we're backing up is the content database. And the content databases live, obviously, on the SharePoint SQL Server instance. So we definitely have to have a backup service on that machine as well to perform those database level backups. Essentially what's happening is, again, the backup service hands off an initiation to VSS. VSS does a snapshot of the databases, hands it back over to the backup service, and then he parlays that information over to our management service, who then writes it to the repository and stores it in the file share that you designate for the host of your backup sets. So yeah. So Art, getting us into the deep end on some service endpoint communication. That's great stuff. So yeah, this is, I mean, it illustrates, I think, why, again, why the configuration wizard was designed and why we go through this discovery process to begin with. Because not all SharePoint backup users are high-level SharePoint farm admins, right, who have a deep understanding or view of every single server in the farm. So maybe they just need to be provisioned a quick account to give them access to discover and deploy from the get-go. And then obviously for the higher level admins, it's just an easier solution if the access is there. Anything else? Any other questions? That was a great one. No, nothing yet. Okay. Well, we're about at the 5-minute mark anyway. So I will invite you all to, if you do have questions after the fact, feel free to contact us at support@metalogix.com or visit our website to open a ticket there, or give us a call, 202-609-9100. We have a dedicated support team, myself being one of them, and chances are you'll end up talking to me, so it's okay. And yeah, I invite you all to contact us. Otherwise, like I said, these videos are being recorded and archived on our website. Just go to the support section of the Metalogix website and look for the Metalogix Academy headers, where you'll find extensive training on other subjects, and then obviously these quick take videos as well. We're going to do these pretty much every week, so stay tuned for future quick quick take videos, and I thank you all for attending, and just let us know if you have additional questions. Thanks a bunch, guys. Y'all have a good day.